It seems so long ago, but how well I remember. We knew it as the Great War, the war to end all wars. And I was there, just another American soldier back in 1917.
Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums drum drumming everywhere.
So prepare,
Say a prayer, send the word, we'll be coming over there, we'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't be back till it's over there. Hurry right away, no delay, go today.
Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad.
Tell your sweetheart not to pine, to be glad her boy's in line. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't be back till it's over there.
Over there.
Order! Halt! About face! Forward! Halt! Left, right, left. Detail, halt! About face! Parade, rest!
That's a bully song. Always has been. It takes me back to a time long ago when I was just a young businessman making my way in the world. But I knew when the guns of war began blazing in Europe that sooner or later America would have to go over there. So in 1915, I helped organize a citizens' military training camp in upstate New York, a little place called Plattsburgh, just in case we had to step up. Now, why did we do this? Well, to answer that, I'd have to tell you a little bit about my father and some of his friends, like Major General Leonard Wood and other prominent figures. My father and his friends believed that America had a responsibility to promote justice, freedom, and democracy at home and around the world. They believed in the morality of strength, and that all Americans have a responsibility as citizens. Now, young men like myself, and women too, wanted to make my father and his friends proud and glad. My father was Theodore Roosevelt, Rough Rider, Colonel, 26th President of the United States. You may have heard of him. He's that rather fierce-looking, bespectacled gentleman on Mount Rushmore, positioned just a little behind some of our other great presidents. Now, it's not like him to be so retiring. But my father had a lot of respect for his predecessors, those who led this nation through its first century. He also believed in performance above prestige, and he raised me and my siblings to believe the same. My father led from the front, and he taught us to do the same. Sometimes to do that, you have to think a little bigger than life, bigger than Mount Rushmore. You have to love and embrace the strenuous life. He was a pretty tough act to follow, especially when you share the same name as him. But I did what he taught us all to do, to carve out a place in history, to put performance above prestige, to be responsible and always do what's best for the good of the whole country, not just for yourself. I did my best to live up to his expectations. I guess I could have done a lot worse.
Well, from Armentières, she hasn't been kissed for 40 years.
Dinky, dinky, parlez-vous.
Yeah, I went over there. So did all of my brothers. The youngest, Quentin, he went over there and never made it back. He was shot down in France just 4 months before the armistice that ended the war. I saw my share of it over there. The Battle of Cantigny with the 1st Division. Got gassed in Soissons. Took a bullet in the leg. Had a nasty limp forever after that. But nothing was worse than waiting for supplies that never came. I got tired of it and paid for new combat boots for all of my men out of my own pocket. That's just one of the times over there when I realized that America needed someone over here fighting for a well-equipped military. Like everyone else, I was mighty glad when it ended. We won the war, but I lost what was left of my youth in those years. I lost my brother, and soon after the war, I lost my father. But I never lost the spirit he put in my heart. And the unflinching pride and patriotism among all of us doughboys who answered the call, that was permanent. No matter whether you were a drafted private from the woods and hollers or an officer with the degrees from Harvard, we shared the common bond of military service.
Dinky, dinky, parlez-vous.
Life is a book that we study. Some of its leaves bring us sigh. There it was written, my buddy, that we must part, you and I. Nights are long since you went away. I think about you all through the day, my buddy, my buddy. Nobody quite so true. Miss your voice, the touch of your hand. Just long to know that you understand. My body, your body misses you.
Now I know I don't have to teach you the meaning of the common bond. That unbreakable tie that unites us as veterans for our entire lives. In war and in peace, we know the meaning of the bond. And comradeship in the service is only one step away from citizenship in the community. After the war, we thought, wouldn't it be grand if we could get our comrades together to keep serving as civilians, to maintain the values that held us together in the darkest hours. Together we could work to prevent another war, or to prepare ourselves and others if it should happen again. Together we could fight in Washington to ensure that veterans and their families were treated fairly by the government that sent them off to fight. Together we could do our best to ensure a square deal for America's youth and children, no matter their circumstances. Now, to get this idea moving, we didn't have a moment to waste. The men and women still stuck in France would be returning home very soon. So, with the support of General Pershing, we held our first organizational meetings just a few months after the armistice. We met in January, we met in February, and then, wouldn't you know it, I got orders to ship out just before the big one, the Paris Caucus in March of 1919. Now, me being there didn't really matter, because the American Legion was never meant to be about any one person. We made one rule early: check your rank at the door. It didn't matter where you went to school or if you went at all, black or white, rich or poor, male or female. We all shared the common bond. And that was the beginning of our American Legion. That was 99 years ago, and we've been going strong ever since, staying true to the founding principles of our Constitution's preamble. For God and country, we associate ourselves for the following purposes: to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, to maintain law and order, to foster and perpetuate a 100% Americanism, to preserve the memories and incidents of our association in the Great Wars, to inculcate a sense of individual obligation to the community, state, and nation, to combat the autocracy of both the classes and the masses, to make right the master of might, to promote peace and goodwill on earth, to safeguard and transmit to posterity the principles of justice, freedom, and democracy, to consecrate and sanctify our comradeship by our devotion to mutual helpfulness.
From every mountainside, let freedom ring. America, America, America.
This, my friends, is what we were when we began, and this is what we have remained for 99 years.
This is my country, land of my birth. This is my country, grandest on earth. I pledge thee my allegiance, America the bold. For this is my country, to have and to hold.
In May that first year, we had our St. Louis caucus to iron out our Constitution, pick a convention city, and to make our name official, the American Legion. The first 8 months, we signed up over 685,000 new Legionnaires. Our first national convention was held right here in Minneapolis. Veterans from across the country poured in to take on issues we learned from the war: a better funded and trained military, compassionate care for our wounded comrades, American patriotism, and support for our young people, our future. Now, it seemed to us back then that priorities like these would remain important for years to come. And you know, we were right. They are still just as important today, maybe even more. Now, in 1921, the American Legion helped create the U.S. Veterans Bureau. That evolved into the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs 9 years later. From day one, we began what would become a perpetual crusade to ensure adequate medical care for our wounded and disabled comrades, even when their wounds were invisible to the eye. We gave America its original flag code. We got jobs for hundreds of thousands of unemployed veterans. We came to the rescue when floods, tornadoes, and fires left towns in ruins and families with nothing to eat. The true heart and soul of the American Legion, its source of its strength and longevity, quickly became the local post. It was there at home that all of our programs and resolutions originated, where all of the Legion's successes are born. From support for the Boy Scouts of America to the leadership of American Legion Baseball, the local post has always answered the call. In 1935, American Legion Boys State got started in Illinois, and a few years later came Boys Nation. Oh, these were no ordinary summer camps. They were all about good citizenship, responsibility, and the obligation we share to participate in a system built on justice, freedom, and democracy. Soon we started National High School Oratorical Contest, not only to teach our young people good speaking, but to show them where their right to speak freely came from in the first place. Across the nation, we consecrate and sanctify our comradeship by our mutual devotion, by our devotion to mutual helpfulness. This simple phrase means many things, and it has led to a century of success. From the world-changing impact of the GI Bill to the individual family that gets an American Legion grant to rebuild their lives after a hurricane, that kind of success doesn't happen without a belief that performance matters more than prestige, and that through the common bond of military service, no matter where or when you serve, almost anything is possible.
Ballin'!
This is the Army, Mr. Jones. No private rooms or telephones. You had your breakfast in bed before, but you won't have it there anymore. This is the Army, Mr. Green. We like the barracks nice and clean. You had a housemaid to clean your floor, but she won't help you out anymore.
In 1941, I re-entered the Army. I must admit I was no spring chicken, but I was fairly certain I could still ruffle a few feathers. 8 months later came Pearl Harbor. The American Legion's argument for preparedness, which to some people was just militarism, suddenly made a whole lot of sense. I saw action in North Africa and Italy, and I was finally able to persuade the top brass to let me join in the first wave on D-Day. When we came ashore on Utah Beach, I knew Hitler's Germany didn't stand a chance against us. This time, we came prepared.
You're in the Army now, you're not behind the plow. You'll never get rich by digging a ditch. You're in the Army now, but she won't help you out. You'll have to do without. She won't help you out anymore.
What a country this has been and is. This land of ours, a place where men and women still swear to give their last full measure of devotion for an idea, the idea of America, and belief in the American veteran. Our nation's greatest legislative accomplishment, the GI Bill of Rights, was born in the minds of legionnaires, American veterans, not politicians or bureaucrats. And no one could have imagined the impact that it would have on the world. It changed the way our nation treated disabled veterans. It sent millions to college, Hundreds of thousands of businesses were capitalized. Tens of millions of homes were financed. And in time to come, this nation would not need to draft a single soldier for more than 45 years and counting, because the GI Bill was incentive enough to give this nation an all-volunteer force. That is a legacy that the American Legion can always be proud of, and a mission that is sure to continue for generations yet to serve. It was right here in Minneapolis, my friends, where our great organization began, where a vision was inspired by a desire to make America strong, both in times of war and times of peace, for the good of all. That vision built the American Legion, first century legacy.
America, God shed his grace on thee, and crowned thy foot with brotherhood from sea to shining
Today, a new vision is coming into focus, led by a new generation of veterans, including, I'm delighted to say, my very own grandson, Theodore Roosevelt IV.
Onward with eyes are gleaming,
onward with eyes are gleaming,
and freedom flames streaming
forward march our country's beat.
Son, it's good to see you.
Great. Hail, keep the glory waving, home and sea, and preserve democracy. Sons of glory, hail, our heroes hail. Staunch and steady, always ready for our cause. The American Legion's call, hear the call, hear the call.
We in this room do not forget those who served and those who waited for their return home. Those few who knew valor and those many who knew fear. Those who survived battle and those who did not. We remember. It is a duty that war places on all of us, to hold sacred the sacrifices made by our parents, friends, sons, and daughters. All of you in this room know, yes, our veterans fought for country and for honor, but mostly in the field, they fought for one another. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. came home from World War I battlefields, and he remembered well his brothers in arms. He could not place a period on his service in that war, a period that might leave the men who returned home without comfort and aid. He knew that their service demanded more of all of us. It demanded that we remember our veterans and their families with concrete action. Concrete action that does not falter, that does not waver, that is not subject to the whims of politics, that belongs to neither party and to no ambition other than memory and duty. And that, I am very proud to say, is heart and soul the American Legion, now entering its second tour of duty, its second 100 years. Across our country, there are American Legion posts and volunteers, your neighbors and mine, coming together to meet the needs of this community. Where there are still local newspapers, there are stories, Post 64 sends 4 local residents to State Trooper Training Program, Salisbury to host American Legion Baseball State Championship. American Legion hosts sock drive for combat troops. We are intimately woven into the fabric of this nation through rural and urban landscapes, wherever our veterans are found, and we come together for larger enterprises as well. The American Legion has given us the VA healthcare system, youth programs to teach and inspire future leaders, recognition and treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, and illnesses caused by Agent Orange, a massive support network for needy families and children. Most importantly, we give ourselves this, our association, our comradeship, our devotion to one another. This is the practice of democracy, the free association of the like-minded to advance a shared cause. And there are few causes as great as ours. Please join me in a salute to the World War I doughboys and doughgirls who came home from war and remembered their comrades in arms. They remembered them so well that they have shielded, comforted, and lifted up more generations than they ever knew. We are the children whom many of these soldiers never met. We are their legacy. Let's honor that together.
With 15,000 marchers and 400,000 spectators jam-packing the 2-mile march route, the American Legion's colorful 1948 parade is the gayest and the wettest in history. The wetness is rain, an avalanche of skies totaling almost 3 inches. The Florida State Police motorcycle team, precision trained, leads off the parade at 4 p.m. under bright sunlight. Here comes National Commander James F. O'Neill, the outgoing commander, acknowledging the salutes of the crowd. The Harry B. Doremus Post 55 prize-winning Drum and Bugle Corps marches by. The crack Drum and Bugle Corps from Bozeman, Montana, in similar headgear, is parading after spending $20,000 to fly to Miami. More than 100 colorful Drum and Bugle Corps bands, drill teams, floats, endless high-stepping drum majorettes are here today. Puerto Rico brings leis and a hula routine. Behind their sensational majorette, if you care to look, is the McAllister Memorial Band of Harwood Post 5, Joliet, Illinois. 3rd consecutive year, the national champions. The Army and Navy roar overhead, blanketing the parade route with flying formations. That's Riverside, New Jersey, Post 146, National Drum and Bugle Corps champions for 1948. Smart-looking outfit. And there's Santa Claus with his reindeer from Santa Claus, Indiana. He's always a hit with kids of any age. A beautiful float of blossoming flowers and some charming southern belles from Tennessee. It turns dark, but the crowd stays on. 5 Arkansas steppers and their convoy. And don't think the band is having an easy time drowning out the whistles all along the way. Well, sir, no parade would be complete without a trick car. I'll bet that one's easy to park. Doherty Post 48 of Akron adds a nostalgic note, a French boxcar. And Oklahoma dazzles with its Argonne Post band from Enid. The gentlemen to the rear of the crowds crane their necks when this group swings by. Georgia enters its claim to southern charm and beauty with this graceful poppy float. And still they come, drum majorettes from Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, there's a cute number, a hula dancing tot. That must be your Legionnaire daddy. The USS Illinois, land-bound but operating. The state of Texas and a prophecy of things to come. A plug for their favorite son, Perry Brown of Beaumont. Holy Name cadets in Florida Miss, the crowds take cover, but the marchers continue. Wellston Memorial Post 154, Missouri, weathers the heavy atmosphere in the state tradition. They have a distinguished citizen along, the Honorable Harry S. Truman. And so the parade maintains its pace and drive into the night under adverse conditions. Legionnaires are convening at Dinner Key in Miami to face serious issues of the nation and the world. Typical of American Legion national conventions is the imposing group of speakers and guests. William Green, Secretary of the Navy Sullivan, Miss Mabel Studebaker of the NEA, and General Leslie Groves, and here's Commander O'Neill bringing the convention to order. The Honorable Millard F. Caldwell, Governor of Florida. There's a fair visitor from California, Virginia Warren, the Governor's daughter. And her daddy, the Honorable Earl Warren, greets the commander. He tells the convention, until we have universal military training, there will be weakness in the armor of America, regardless of the strength of our armed forces. General Hoyt Vandenberg says a strong Air Force is the best guarantee of peace. Lieutenant Colonel Albert Cox, Jr. of the Air Corps. Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. The audience welcomes ex-Governor of Minnesota Harold Stassen. He urges a militant fight against communism at home. Legionnaire Governor-elect McMath of Arkansas says hello. Coast Guard Rear Admiral Raymond T. McElligott speaks. General Carl Gray, Administrator of Veterans Affairs. The Honorable John W. Snyder, Secretary of the Treasury. Louis K. Goff presents the National Security Committee report. Past National Commander Harry Calmery. Governor Ralph Gates of Indiana. Major General Louis B. Hershey, Director of Selective Service. Admiral Leahy speaks. The convention delegates favor UMT, rent controls, housing priorities for veterans, and veterans' pensions. The Honorable Strom Thurmond, Governor of South Carolina. Commander O'Neill is awarded membership of the French Legion of Honor and the Croix de Guerre. Legionnaires and their guests overflow Dinner Key to honor a delegate from Missouri, the Honorable Harry S. Truman, President of the United States. The President with his guard of honor enters. Mrs. Truman and Miss Margaret Truman greet the Legionnaires. President Truman will be the first living president to receive the Legion's Distinguished Service Medal. The President says the world has learned it is weakness and appeasement which invite aggression. He calls for objectivity and firmness internationally. And then the President's honor guard files down to the rostrum, and the President leaves the auditorium. Back on the floor, a victorious Texas delegation sweeps its candidate Perry Brown into office as the newly elected national commander of the American Legion. On record against communism at home and Russian aggression abroad, for strengthening the United Nations and the elimination of the veto power in all matters involving aggression, for limitation of world arms production, and for the creation of a world police force. They choose their new leader to implement these programs by unanimous vote of the delegates. Commander Brown introduces Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Hubert Good of Oregon, newly elected national president of the American Legion Auxiliary. The newly elected vice commanders. Mrs. Hutton, retiring auxiliary president, joins the group at the podium. And here he is, America's #1 Legionnaire, Perry Brown of Beaumont, Texas, the national commander of the American Legion.